Thanks. Hi, I'm Nikki. I am a DPhil student in AI and computer vision at the University of Oxford in the visual geometry group, working with Professor Andrew Zisserman. And today I'm going to be talking about counting any object in images. So you can imagine if you have a tool that can automatically count any object in images, you can do many different tasks. And this would be quite useful. For example, you might want to count people in crowds to limit the spread of illnesses like COVID-19. Or you might want to count cells in microscopic images to diagnose different diseases. Or you might want to do biodiversity monitoring in conservation. Or monitor the number of open spaces in a parking lot. So it's pretty clear that this problem has many different applications across many different domains. And so this is actually what we tried to address in our NeurIPS paper, CountGD, Multimodal Open World Counting. So this is joint work with Tengda Han and my supervisor, Andrew Zisserman. And this is the main topic of this talk. So in this paper, we proposed the first multimodal open world counting model, CountGD. It accepts an image, as you can see the image of the blueberries and strawberries, a text description, and any number of visual examples specifying the object to count. And it can accept either the text alone, the visual examples alone, or both simultaneously. And that's actually what makes it a multimodal model. The specifications of the object to count come from two different modalities, namely text and visual inputs. And it's open world in the sense that it can, in theory, count any object. And it's able to do that because it's learning to take the object specification as an input in addition to the image. So when you specify strawberry, it should output detections of just the strawberries and a final count, and vice versa for the blueberries. And in theory, you can specify anything, even if it's not in the training set of the model. So this is a video created by Analyd, which is an open source data annotation tool. They have integrated CountGD with their user interface to provide a tool that allows you to count any object in theory. And this is a video they created showing the integration of their interface with CountGD. So you can see they're using CountGD to count a variety of different objects in various images using text, using visual examples, or both. And you can see that it's able to generalize across different images and settings. And for example, here is a neuron that is being counted, and this is not in the training set of CountGD, and yet it's able to tackle that problem. So this is the architecture. It's built on top of Grounding DINO. Everything we've added is in the very light blue. So the first part that we've added is this exemplar extraction module. So Grounding DINO normally just takes an image and a text describing the object that you want to detect. But for CountGD, we added this capability to specify the object to count with visual examples, and this is how we did this. So this exemplar extraction module is zoomed out over here. What we do is we take the image features from the SWIN transformer, which is the original image encoder from Grounding DINO. It provides feature maps at different scales because it is a hierarchical vision transformer. We upscale all the frozen feature maps to the same height and width, concatenate them, and project them down to 256 dimensions, which is the same dimension as the text tokens. And then we crop out the visual exemplar regions. And so that is what produces what we call the exemplar tokens. So importantly, these tokens are the same shape as the text tokens. And that allows us to cast them as text tokens when we pass them through the rest of Grounding DINO. So basically, we just pretend that the exemplars are also text and just treat them as such throughout the rest of the training process. And so one important part of this is that we do apply self-attention in the feature enhancer between the visual exemplar and the text tokens. So the model actually learns to fuse the two modalities to provide a more powerful specification of the object to count. And also, if you see in this diagram, so these green vectors here, these are the fused features. So if you see there are 2 exemplar tokens here, 4 text tokens, and I believe there are 6 green tokens here. Yeah, and these are what we call the fused features. So the next part that we added is to map the detection problem to a counting one. So this is what we show over here. So basically, Grounding DINO outputs a number of queries. In this case, we output 900. These are proposals for potential object instances, and they are vectors. We dot them with the different fused features here, and using that, we get a similarity map. We take the max over all the fused features, and we get a confidence score for each of the region proposals. So this is what we're plotting over here. So you can see there is some confidence on the strawberries. The way we get rid of that is we apply a filter or a threshold. And this is a hyperparameter that is set using a grid search on the validation set. Then we get a bunch of center points, and these are just enumerated to estimate the count. So CountGD, given an input image and any number of visual exemplars and or text, outputs center points for all the objects specified by the visual example and or the text, and a final count, which is just an enumeration of the center points. So this is the loss that we use. This is exactly the same as Grounding DINO's loss, but a difference here is that instead of regressing boxes like Grounding DINO, because Grounding DINO is an object detector, we regress center points. And the reason that we regress center points is that counting data is very expensive to obtain because there are images with hundreds to thousands of objects labeled. And to get a bounding box for each object is very expensive. So oftentimes what you will see is these data sets are labeled with points. And so instead we regress points. So in the loss, you can see this is the predicted center points from the model. And these are the ground truth ones from the data set. And we try to match them during training. The remaining terms in the loss function are just from Grounding DINO. So using this loss, we train CountGD on the FSC 147 dataset with text and visual exemplars. And these are just some examples from that dataset. During training, the text and the image encoders are frozen. And this is to preserve the powerful pre-trained features from Grounding DINO. What is fine-tuned are the feature enhancer and the cross-modality decoder, and the self-attention occurs in the feature enhancer. So here are some results from CountGD. In the top row, you can see the input image and the text that we give to the model, as well as the visual examples, which are specified with yellow boxes and yellow arrows pointing to them. The output of CountGD is in the bottom row, and you can see the center points plotted together with the predicted and ground truth counts. And these are all images from the test set of FSC 147. So being a multimodal model, CountGD accepts visual exemplars alone, text alone, or both simultaneously. So here are some examples of just using text alone. So in CARP, which is a car counting data set, we provide just the text car, and this is zero shot, and CountGD is able to count the cars. On the right, you see some examples from CountBench, and in these cases, we provide longer text describing the object to count. So something interesting to note is that counting models tend to struggle with self-similarity. So if there are 2 similar components in an object, like sunglasses or butterflies, oftentimes the counting model will double count each of the instances. And this is actually an issue that we had with a prior model that we worked on, CountX. But you can see here that CountGD seems to have stronger generalization capabilities than prior work because it's putting a dot on each of the butterflies. In other cases, for example, sunglasses, it won't do so well. But we found that this example was particularly interesting because this was in the limitations section of a prior paper about something that we couldn't do, and now we can do this. So here are some quantitative results. So we test CountGD on 3 different data sets. And as you can see, at the time, it achieved state-of-the-art on those different data sets. So lower scores are better. These are error results, so lower errors are better. And you can see in the right-hand bar, CountGD achieves lower errors than the state-of-the-art for the data set, which is plotted on the left-hand bar in each of these settings. So at the end of our paper, we go through a preliminary study into the interactions between the visual examples and the text. So what we do firstly for the study is we, in addition to freezing the image and text backbones that we did for the original CountGD model, we also freeze the feature enhancer to better preserve the capabilities of Grounding DINO. And then we just train CountGD as before. And what we noticed is that some interactions between the different modalities emerges. So, and this is what we study here. So in the top left, you can see that given the input image and the visual exemplar, what we get is the model just counts all of the cars. So in this case, the visual exemplar represents the class of the object, but then we can use the text to filter out mainly the white cars. In this example, you can see it's missing some of them. So this is not, these emergent properties are not perfect, but they're interesting to study that these even arise because the model wasn't trained for any of these capabilities. These are just emerging as a result of the training that we did. And another thing to note is that in these examples, we plot the confidence score of the model, not just the center points, so we can see how the confidence varies with different kinds of textual and visual inputs. So in this example here, you could see again the visual exemplar specifies the class, so all the buttons are lighting up, but then you can use the text to kind of turn on one of the colors. So here you can, the red lights up in confidence, and here the black lights up in confidence. In the bottom example, you can see that we, again, use the visual exemplar to specify the class, but then you can use the text to actually specify spatial location. And you can see the confidence on the top row lights up here, and the confidence on the bottom row lights up here. And this is interesting because in this case, with the visual exemplar alone, which only specifies local regions, you cannot get this spatial granularity. But then when you bring in the text, you suddenly have the machinery to specify this as well. And on the other hand, the exemplar adds more accuracy because you have a richer visual signal to provide the model with a specification of the object to count. So now I'm going to go through some applications that we've seen the model used for. Yeah. So one application that we've seen people use the model for is for biodiversity monitoring and conservation. So you can see here I'm counting the jaguars. I'm going to go from left to right into increasing order of complexity. Here you can see that it's counting the seals. So these are only given text. And it's all the same model. Here we're counting new. So new is kind of an obscure word that someone else asked me to try. I didn't actually know what it meant, but the model is still able to count the objects correctly. And in this example, I didn't actually go and count the penguins because there were so many, but it is putting a dot on each penguin just from a high level look. In the other examples, I did actually count by hand. So this is an example from a biologist who's using CountGD to count large populations of seabirds to monitor the influence of climate change on the population size. And he is using the CountGD app I developed to do this. It's on Hugging Face if anyone wants to try to use the model. So by hand, he approximately counted 574 birds, and this is what the model output. So this is quite cool. And we are also working with the same biologists to count the largest population of animals on Earth on this remote uninhabited island called Zavodovsky Island. And it has over 1 million penguins on it. And they are currently not counted. And so we want to see if we can enumerate them and study them because this could yield novel insights into biology that are not possible to realize at smaller scales. So this is an exciting application that we're working on. Another application that we're working on is with the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute. Researchers there are trying to count cells in microscopic images to accelerate the pace of biology research or genomics research. And the images that they came to us with are very difficult. So you can see here, this is really hard because these cells actually clump together and they become like this is two cells. Um, it's very difficult for the model to distinguish between each of the instances because they're chaining together. Another challenging situation for counting models is fine-grained counting, so distinguishing between multiple repeating objects within the same image. So here they want to count the dead cells, the white cells, and the red cells. And right now this is difficult. So we're working on this with. So we've seen quite wide adoption of the model, which is pretty exciting. So we have an open source app to test out the model, and we have the code to reproduce with the results of the paper and also with the pre-trained weights of the model. You saw earlier, Analyd it has integrated CountGD for data annotation and counting. Landing AI's vision agent tool also uses CountGD. So Landing AI is tied to Andrew Ng. And Saiwa is also using CountGD in their counting with prompts tool. And recently, ByteDance, so from TikTok, they're using CountGD for automated data annotation in their seed 1.5 VL model. So recently found out that was happening. So that was quite cool to see. And now I'm going to go through some current challenges. So one current challenge is this fine-grained counting, so distinguishing between different classes of or objects within the same image. So here a conservationist wants to count the male and female seals, and you can see that I think that I don't know which one is the male and the female, but I know they differ between their colors. So the whitish ones are different from the darkish seals in gender. And so the counting model can't do this right now. Another thing is like if you have lots of repeating items like on a grocery shelf and they're kind of similar, each item, for example, there are multiple items that are yellowish or orange. This is also quite difficult. So we want to improve this. Another challenge is counting all the birds on this island is quite difficult. So it's like a giant TIFF image and we have to break it up into parts and run the model on each part and then uh reconcile the overlapping regions. So we're also working on this. This is quite challenging. So thank you. Feel free to reach out. This is my email. You can also probably find information on my LinkedIn and just shoot me a message and I'm happy to chat.
Fantastic. There are an overwhelming amount of questions in the Q&A, but I'll try to grab a few here, summarize a few, and get to some. There was a couple of questions regarding curiosity around the infrastructure on the back end. A couple of components, which would be, can you share what your compute looked like? Can you share what sort of tools you use to manage it? Did you use university infrastructure? Did you use cloud infrastructure? What kind of picture can you paint in regards to the infrastructure that was required for the research?
Yeah, so the model we just use I think the model is like 1.2 gigabytes and I just use one 24 GB GPU, like one very standard GPU on from academic resources. So it's not very heavyweight. So yeah, and I just developed it in PyTorch. and Python. All the code is in Python and PyTorch, and the app is on Hugging Face. It's running on a GPU cranked. It's pretty lightweight. The data set FSC 147 has, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 training images. Yeah, so it's quite reasonable, I would say.
Well done. Another question, which is how well does it handle counting partially obscured objects, which is very common in crowds of people? And then the follow-up is, does it handle counting over time, like a line of people going past a camera?
So for the first question, I think it's pretty good at dense scenes, and this is because FSC 147, I believe, has lots of examples like that because it's a counting data set. So that's one of the ways you're able to adapt Grounding DINO to counting is by fine-tuning on that data set. So the data was a really important ingredient. For the counting over time, you can apply CountGD frame by frame to you can apply CountGD frame by frame to a sequence of video frames, but to kind of to match the instances, you need something else. But yeah, I will just stay tuned for that one.
Okay, we'll take two more. The next one, was there a model that prepared the image, masking and cropping before the counting model?
Oh, no, we just give the image to the counting model. There's nothing, I mean, there's at the, yeah, but that's, yeah, there's nothing. You just give like the app, you just give the model the image and some specification.
And we'll take one last one. It'll be kind of a 2-for-1. I think they're both within the realm of 3D. The first one is there a way to add the ability to count GD to detect 3D coordinates of the detected objects?
Oh, you mean to map the 2D pixel coordinates to 3D?
Mhm.
Um, Not right now. We don't have that capability. I'd have to think about it. I mean, yeah, we don't have that capability right now. We just do X. Right now, we just output XY coordinates, and that would require some additional development and math, and then probably also having the camera calibration parameters, and it's more than just what we have right now.
Yeah, so I believe Jan also asked a similar question, which was any future plans to extend it for 3D predictions, so XYZ centroids?
Yes.